Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Coffee Companions, where I have made a new friend and I thought you should meet her too. Her name is Nokuthula Chonco and she's a learning and development specialist and a curator of information in the career development space. What does that mean? Well, in essence, she has over 10 years in the human capital field where she's had various roles, predominantly in learning and development. And she's currently employed at a leading national development finance institution where her role focuses on skills development, governance, and youth skills development. Her purpose in life is development, which means being a connector, opening doors for those behind her, and ultimately having an impact resulting in transforming lives. And I think that there is no better way to live than exactly that. Hi, Nokuthula, how are you?
Hi, Innocent. I am good. And how are you? And hello to your community.
Thank you so much. Well, I am well, excepting it is cold outside, so I wouldn't be anywhere else other than visiting with friends at the Performance Cafe because the weather's really bad.
Indeed, indeed. And load shedding notwithstanding.
There's that as well. Yeah, you know, us South Africans, we're a tough bunch, right? We can load shed, lock down, and have bad weather and still carry on smiling.
Indeed, we are strong.
We are strong. Nokuthula, thank you for joining me today on Performance Cafe. And I'm so excited about our discussion because, you know, so often when we speak performance, we speak the people I've interviewed, we're not often the people that are teaching and training the youth of the future. You know, we're trying to sell consulting deals, or we are, you know, we're at a different level. We're never actually the trainer who's in the room or who's compiling the training or who's compiling the program for someone to be trained on. And so I thought it'd be very interesting to see from your perspective, what does performance mean as you see it? And I'm quite happy for us to stick to, if you wanted to, sort of like a youth topic for the day.
Okay. Now, thank you for that question, Innocent. So, probably in my context, performance would mean not only just good to great, but really really coming in, not knowing any better to really becoming a professional. So for me, it really is about from not knowing where I belong, not even being able to articulate my value, what it is that I bring as a young person, all the way to then ultimately exiting, being able to at least articulating my value, who I am. And so yes, from mediocre to great and ultimate to good and ultimately to great, and just being able to articulate that, because I think in my day-to-day we have a lot of young professionals. They are technically competent, but then articulating that and living that out is something else.
I hear you. I hear you. And for our viewers, sorry, we are in load shedding in South Africa, so our apologies if the videos freeze every once in a while. The audio will come through crystal clear because we are load shedding. So, Nokuthula, when we were talking about this session, you spoke of something very interesting, and that was the importance of a particular manager in your life and how he treated you as a young employee. Do you want to share some of that? Do you want to tell us what you think the role of mentorship is for our youth as we develop them in business?
Yes. So thank you very much for reminding me about that. And when I think about in my early career, when I just entered the world of work, one of the best managers till this day, he was not only a manager, but he was a leader and a mentor to me. His name was Avinash, and he really taught me besides me managing my time and all of that, but he was somebody who really inspired the best out of me. One beyond the skills and competence, but just allowing me an element of freedom to not necessarily, figure out the how for myself. It's, be creative in getting to the output rather than micromanage me. But also like when I think about him, just some of the values that he had, he was not a micromanager, and quite often um, there's a perception that young people are difficult, or because yes, they don't come, but they don't come with a plug and play. So and
I don't
so
know why.
yes. Um, yeah, and he allowed me, to really figure out my own settings in terms of how I achieve, how I get from here to there. And he removed a lot of the anxiety in terms of one, finding my place in this environment. And so for me, that kind of leader and mentor really brought the best out of me.
So it's an interesting thing because you are a dynamic, wonderful professional woman. You've been at this for so many years. So let me guess, you grew up affluent in the rich suburbs and, have traveled the world. Am I right?
You are right. You are right in a parallel universe, but the one that I live in, the one that I live in and that I grew up in, it's not quite that. I grew up in Eqobo, Godo, fetching water from the river. My schooling started at Shobai Shobi Primary. We wrote on, I think, what is called a slate. I don't know.
Yes.
Now I'm revealing my age. And yeah, that is where my schooling started. And there was, and it's interesting that you say that, there were certain things and there's certain mannerisms I picked up, or, things that were considered respect. You didn't look at a teacher in the eye. If I wanted to go to the bathroom, I'd say, Tisha, go out. And all sorts of things, some which continue to linger with me even now as a seasoned professional. And again, as a young professional at the time, some of those things actually had me misunderstood. For example, there's things like eye contact. I was not an individual who made eye contact because for me that was disrespect. But at work and in certain environments, I currently working in a banking environment, it almost throws, makes you seem somewhat suspect in terms of your character. Are you not being honest? And it had nothing to do with my integrity. It just was how I was socialized. And yes, so yes, so no, in a parallel universe, I grew up in an affluent back with an affluent background, but it really has been different mentors throughout my life who exposed me to such different experiences, mainly through books. And yes, and here I am today.
So an interesting question, and one we didn't really prepare. You speak of multiple mentors. So many people sit and think, I'm not important enough. I'm not senior enough in an organization. What do you think? Do you think there are people who aren't mentoring that should be? And how do I know when I am mentorship material?
Wow. Okay. And you're right. This was not part of what we'd planned. But speaking of, so for me, I think, and this is even advice I sometimes give to young people, that even almost steer away from the word mentor, because sometimes even when you approach somebody with, will you be my mentor, it's just a bit overwhelming. Sometimes the person is wondering, do you want me to reparent you? And not a lot of people are up for that. Even I'm not up for that. So so over the years, one of the things I've learned is that the truth is a lot of people can be your mentors, but rather than, there's certain elements, you won't get everything out of one person. So rather think about the different business problem or different pain points that different people can help you address, and then rather approach them about those specific elements. And a lot of my mentors do not even know that they are my mentors, because and going back about what is mentorship material, because sometimes that word on its own and its interpretation, conjures up different images in our heads. So I have a lot of mentors. Some don't even know they are my mentors. And then there's also obviously those I've met through books who I've never met physically, but I'll call them biblio mentors, because they've taken me places I've never been, but they've also helped me navigate
A lot.
different environments, and ultimately even having met you, and it's through different mentors and lessons I've learned.
Wonderful. So I want to come back to something that we spoke about slightly earlier. And it's this concept of, sorry, when I look down, my notes are on my lap. This concept of millennials. They're entitled, they're lazy, they don't want to listen, they want to do everything their own way. It's frustrating, right? I think we've forgiven them.
Yes.
I think we've forgiven them because you millennials are now at a stage where you are married with children and households, yes. And so,
Yes.
we feel your life will become more real. But I think there's always going to be that gap. I'm sure the baby boomers felt that way about Gen X. Gen X feels that way about the millennials. The millennials are going to feel that way about whatever the next generation is. I haven't even gotten caught up to that. How do we close the gap?
Well, I guess there's no silver bullet, but one, I think an element of compassion, but just and good old-fashioned communication. Because I think about myself for the longest time as a millennial, trying to find myself in the world of work. And when I look at even different people who've got the best out of me, have been, there's been those individuals who've been at least willing to listen. You may discard my idea and load shed it afterwards, or multiply it by 0, that meaning we do nothing. But just a willingness to listen. So, and when I think of even some of, different leaders I've worked for, those who really have got the best out of me have been those willing to engage, not necessarily take all my ideas, but engage, listen, and also be open to challenging some of my radical creative ideas and possibly showing me blind spots and allowing me to borrow wisdom. But it really has boiled down a lot of it to communication, but also the approach. Because then, if you think I'm entitled, I'm all of that. The truth is, yeah, I'll most likely reflect behavior that will confirm that, or you will press buttons that will bring that entitled part of me. Because yes. And it's interesting that you speak about entitlement. And I know we didn't talk about this very early in my career. I remember when I just graduated, and I was what was called a PPT. I worked in a credit control environment, and I called people who had not been paying their debts for over 9 months. And the truth of the matter is, I felt I'd worked hard to get this degree. I'd studied through UNISA, and I can tell a story like everybody else does. So to some degree, I felt entitled. That there is more to it. I did not work so hard for this. So there is an element of entitlement, and to some, it seemed like entitled, but for me, I was like, there is bigger for me than this. And and for me, that was a stepping stone.
And I think what you touch on there is so true, right? That one person's entitlement is another person's ambition.
Thank you, thank you very much. And when you say that, you remind me of one of the things I've come to also appreciate. Certain people, depending on who they are, will interpret my ambition as entitlement, or my desire to even want more or negotiate for more. Because also, I think myself 10 years ago, I also would have thought certain people are entitled. But now that I've learned, or I've got to understand the world differently, I understand, no, it's just they are confident and they understand their value. And so when they negotiate their value, they're not entitled. It's who they believe they are.
So it's so interesting. And I'll tell you, I have a parallel example for you. The bossy girl. At school, I was the bossy girl. I would tell people what to do. I would organize things. I would rule the roost. Don't be a bossy girl. But when the boy did it, he was showing leadership skills. So it's again that maybe the thread here is I like what you actually said when we were preparing this question in the interview, for the interview. You said maybe we should fix ourselves and not the millennials or not the young people in the room.
Yes,
and I
yes.
hear what you're saying is that it's the way we as leadership approach young people as opposed to
Definitely.
what's really happening with that young person, because they also only know what they know.
Yes, and they don't know what they don't know. But also going back to how you show up and the mindsets you go in with that, because the truth is, from the time we believe this young person is entitled, is all of that already. Our mindset is already biased towards a certain way. So even the tools that we use are going to yield a different result rather than if we go with the, you know what, there's another coach I follow. She always talks about, going into a certain space from empty, just really being open and receptive to
Love it.
what we'll see, yeah.
I love that concept of go in empty, because I suppose it takes curiosity to fill that emptiness.
Definitely. That's true.
So you spoke about how this manager, well, all your mentors, some of the impact that they've had on you. You spoke about that you weren't micromanaged, that he was open to your ideas, but he was also open to challenging you. What values does our current management principles teach the youth about how they should treat each other in work?
Sure, that's an interesting question. And when you say teach, I can't help but think of my 4-year-old nephew and just children as a whole, that, or even young people, that what you say and what you teach. So there is what I believe the intention would be to teach, but rather I think the gap is at the what is demonstrated. And the truth is, what you demonstrate is generally what we learn from most, whether we like it or not. And a lot of them, in my experience, both where I am now as well as having been an up-and-coming young professional, is that has been around the lived values, or maybe the lived experience, in that quite often it's we are in the 21st century, but it is still that a lot of the time, I think, is you are the junior professional, you are here to just do this, sit in your corner, do not disturb, as well as I know not all organizations do this, but still I don't know, to me it's almost a very weird reverence of seniority, to the level that and again, it's what is lived versus what is written, or what is written on any company website. But it is that unsaid unsaid way that we, in terms of how leadership or it is demonstrated. And for me, it's one of the things that even today still hinders a lot of young people. But also, I guess on the other side, I look at myself, it's also brought about creativity in that certain things, and how we met. At some point, I just got tired of, jumping through so many hoops to get a point across. And yeah, so I'm grateful for it, in that it's opened side hustles, etc. But there's and there was the example there was something that you shared with me, and you'll share it. I believe you'll share it, about Netflix and blockbusters. And I'm thinking, how many Netflix young people are in the room who would have an idea that could really propel this organization to the next level, and just because there are 10 steps or 10 hoops and the culture does not allow them, then they just go and finally, or either stay frustrated and die, or ultimately establish their own thing. So yeah, I know the question was about management principles, but it's more for me about the lived principles that I've observed.
And I think the two overlap, because I mean, very often management controls how the culture in the organization gets to work. So yes, what you were referring to is, I've seen it in a couple of places, but Blockbuster was offered the opportunity to buy out Netflix for something like 20 or 40 million. And Netflix was like posting people DVDs through, to watch, and then it being posted back. And that was, I think it was like early 2000s. And in 2018, Blockbuster didn't exist anymore. And Netflix is like now, well, what Netflix is. We don't even have to talk about it. And this morning, interestingly enough, I see that there's a young entrepreneur, I think in India, who is busy doing better at some technology than Elon Musk. And this young man has nothing, right? It's not like he's got the whole world behind him the way Elon Musk has.